Is Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan? And if she does, what could happen? Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. Nancy Pelosi has created a lot of buzz with her on-again, off-again, now on-again plans for a flying junket to Asia. Yesterday, the buzz got deadly serious. A leading Chinese propaganda producer threatened her with a shoot-down. That has started a debate not only on whether she should go, but whether she must go. Before I get into any more detail, I do want to shout out to the sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views, link in the description. And be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, including this t-shirt that I have chosen for today, which simply reads, "I did that." Yeah, this is Biden setting off an explosion. Well, let's hope it doesn't get to that, shall we? Now then, when the Speaker of the House of Representatives takes an official trip out of the country, that is serious business. After all, the Speaker is third in line of presidential succession. Title III, United States Code, Section 19, otherwise known as the Presidential Succession Act of 1947, as amended. That also means that whoever attacks the Speaker of the House commits an act of war against the United States. Such an act would be almost as serious as an attack upon the President himself. And anyone who threatens such an act threatens war. Reportage on the proposed Nancy Pelosi trip and the alleged threat comes from Reuters, Business Insider, Politico.com, the New York Post, and the South China Morning Post. In addition, we have commentary from Unheard, that's UNHERD, and National Review, who take opposite positions on whether Nancy Pelosi should go. The Washington Post also rules a Nancy Pelosi trip a no-go, especially one including Taiwan. Now, what kind of threat are we talking about? It starts with Mr. Hu Xijin, Xijin, a commentator with and former editor-in-chief of Global Times, the Chinese counterpart to Russia's Pravda. He wrote on Twitter, and I quote, "I've conveyed the message. If the U.S. military sends fighter jets to escort Pelosi to Taiwan, then the move could take the vile nature of such a visit to another level and would constitute aggression." Those are fighting words. And here's more. Quote, "If U.S. fighter jets escort Pelosi's plane into Taiwan, it is an invasion. The People's Liberation Army has the right to forcibly dispel Pelosi's plane and the U.S. fighter jets, including firing warning shots and making tactical movement of obstruction. If ineffective, then shoot them down." Unquote, Hu Xijin. Wow. Now that proved too much for Twitter, who locked the account and ordered Mr. Hu to delete the tweet. One can still find it on Chinese Twitter counterpart called Weiho. Now, Mr. Hu has a reputation for intemperate official remarks. London's Guardian in December of last year called him China's troll king. Chinese President Xi Jinping has a slightly more measured response. Perhaps. You tell me how measured this is. He was speaking to Biden by telephone 2 days ago. Quote, "Those who play with fire will perish by it." Unquote, Xi Jinping. Ask yourselves whether he would have dared say that to President Trump. Earlier today, China announced military exercises in the Taiwan Strait that separates Taiwan from the Chinese mainland. Now, before I get into whether Nancy Pelosi should go or not go, I want to shout out to another sponsor, BitNext. This is your replacement for Zoom, Slack, the Google G Suite, Microsoft Office 365, Dropbox, WeTransfer, and Chili Piper, among others. Unlike any of them, BitNext protects your content and conversations so well that even the administrators can't see it. So this is your channel for secure comms, conferencing, cloud storage, and file sharing. Best of all, everything is back-end. You don't even need client software. If you have a browser, you can use BitNext. Follow the link and give them a try. 28 days free of charge. You can't beat that with a stick. All right. Has Nancy Pelosi definitely said that Taiwan would be part of her itinerary? No. Nevertheless, these latest provocative statements have started a debate on whether she should land in Taiwan or not. The last Speaker of the House to visit Taiwan was Newt Gingrich in 1997. Chinese ruling Communist Party were no happier about it then than they are now. But now their rhetoric has gotten less temperate than it was then. No one seems to expect the Chinese to attack Taiwan anytime soon. Some observers seem to think that the People's Liberation Army, which actually is their unified military force, wants a few more years to be ready with the latest and greatest strategy, tactics, and weapons. The two no-go outlets seem to be playing the usual anti-war card. Don't provoke them, they say. Not a word about whether the Chinese have provoked the United States or are setting a bad precedent. Which is National Review's point. If China is prepared to go to war over a single visit, they'll demand more concessions whether Nancy Pelosi goes or stays away. And if Pelosi does go to Taiwan, the Chinese will respond in some fashion. National Review goes on to say, quote, but the cost it might impose on U.S.-China relations still will be less than the price of cancellation. Neither China nor the United States is prepared for a major confrontation. Better to take the hit to the relationship now than let Xi Jinping dictate Nancy Pelosi's or anyone else's itinerary. Unquote, National Review. Actually, this drama touches the larger question of whether China wants to be a self-sufficient civilizational state or an empire builder. Communists have always been empire builders. I've been over this before. We saw it with Nikita S. Khrushchev and the Cuban Missile Crisis. For that matter, we saw it with the late Fidel Castro himself, but he almost doesn't count. Castro never did anything more than play Me Too to the big dog that was the USSR. More to the point, President Xi is in trouble. Absolute monarchies, hereditary or otherwise, do not exist and have never existed. They are oligarchies that have governing boards, quite like boards of directors of joint stock corporations. China's governing board is called the Political Bureau, or Politburo. And we have reason to think that they are not pleased with Xi's leadership and haven't been pleased for years. The Belt and Road Initiative has suffered with China's shrinking economy. Those who focus on the American debt problem forget that China has a debt problem of its own. Mr. Xi's zero virus that shall remain nameless policy has hurt China's economy worse and has done the opposite of rallying the people. And different factions are already falling out over whether China did right to ally herself with Russia, beginning with the special military operation in Ukraine. In fact, Chinese leaders have always been suspicious of any friendship with Russia. A chief executive facing ouster is unpredictable. Such an officer is therefore dangerous, particularly if he plays with real guns. But the danger will only become greater if America capitulates in any way, which means Nancy Pelosi has little choice but to call Mr. Xi's bluff and Mr. Hu's bluff. Link in the description of the article to Title III United States Code Section 19 about presidential succession and to conservative news and views. I have another link to the awesome online store and to BitNext, as I also mentioned. If you like what you've heard, you can like this video. And on the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link and also a link to a video I did earlier about America becoming a civilizational state and whether China really is one or not. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.